Hello, fellow book lovers of the internet. I'm Cecil. It's Wednesday, and it's time for the Q1 writing vlog. Content warning for this one, because we are going to be talking about the futility of war and violence. Not, I don't think, in graphic, realistic detail, but pondering upon it. Today, everything's connected, so we're going to be a little less structured when talking about progress on goals. Something that's plagued me for years, ever since I took up rewriting the book, is the idea of war. I kept trying to figure out the win conditions because that felt like it would be something the antagonist had considered, but frankly, no matter how many real life wars I watch play out before my eyes, no matter how many fictional worlds I explore the conflicts of, it never makes sense. Revolutionary wars, maybe. The win condition is obvious. One side agrees to the freedom and sovereignty of the other side. Civil wars, maybe. In some cases, the win condition is the same as revolutions. Sometimes civil wars are part of revolutions or attempts at them. In both of these situations, war seems to be the last resort, most of the time. Sometimes it's just violence right out the gate, but you know what I mean. If there's a negotiation with clear demands, those are usually articulated first. There's an effort to diplomatically, democratically, rhetorically appeal to the other party. And then when that proves, what, unsatisfactory, we resort to killing each other. But sometimes wars don't have a clear win condition. Sometimes it feels like the murder button is pushed way too early with too little effort. And other times it feels like, in lieu of diplomacy, leaders default to apathy until it's a problem that only war seems capable of solving. And if you're wondering what the hell this has to do with my book, let's backtrack. Right now, I'm trying to finish my outline and get back into world building. These two goals means that I have to confront the world outside of my protagonists, a world that's at war. I know the middle point, and I know when the war turned into what it is now, and I even understand why it's gone on for so long, but the war before the arrival of the antagonist is vague and unclear to me. As for the original win conditions, let alone my antagonist's win conditions, it's hard to fathom. And maybe it's the autism getting in the way. I see war as something functionally illogical, messy, catastrophic, childish. I've never been able to picture the honor in war, and I certainly do not comprehend the thought process behind building weapons capable of annihilating a fucking planet. These are the obvious weapons to turn to in a story with a war is bad overtone, but it's difficult to fathom what good enough reason anyone would have to use them. War in the post nuclear era is largely a game of, if you don't do exactly what I want, I'll punch you in the face, and if that doesn't work, I'll remind you I have the ability to take out the planet. Like, alright, cool, but have you considered not doing that? Eat a fucking Snickers. You're not you when you're hungry, and nothing has ever been that serious. And over communism? Get a grip, McCarthy. Holy shit. So, yeah. As I progress into the second major arc of the story, Heather and Aaron are going to start encountering more people from the parallel Earth. They will have context and biases and experiences shaping their view of the world and the war that has destroyed this world. They will communicate some of that in some way to the protagonists. I want there to be depth and variety, and in order to do this meaningfully, I need to understand for myself what happened. I fear if I don't, it's going to come across like a very blunt, inelegant, war bad, and senseless message. Sometimes when a story hits you over the head with its moral, it makes you roll your eyes more than listen to it. And I trust my readers to hear a variety of inputs about how the war came about, changed, and affected people's lives, and come to their own conclusions about whether or not it was worth it. They don't need me to hold their hand through an obviously ridiculous conflict so that they reach the exact conclusion I'm aiming for. Literature is a dialogue. Deep down, this is also the human need to make things make sense. Why do people commit atrocities? Why are we okay with spending thousands of years using violence, murder, and intimidation to get our way? Why do regular people have to go and die for the whims of the wealthy and the powerful? A lot of people will tell you some variation of there is no reason, or maybe trying to understand why just justifies the actions. I staunchly oppose this line of thinking in many instances because it feeds into cognitive dissonance about our own capacity for evil. If we think that people just wake up and for no reason at all decide, let's do bad things or kill a lot of people, it's easy to think, well, I would never do that. And yeah, most people wouldn't. What lies do governments tell to manufacture consent for atrocities? What lies must leaders first tell themselves? This has got to be the key of understanding war, or at least part of it. Often, the circumstances are less than ideal for the common people for one reason or another. Cost of living, inflation, job insecurity, lack of access to basic needs. When the human desire to With the human desire to understand comes the human tendency to assign patterns and correlation. I've found this to be where a lot of propaganda can really shine. Modern prejudice and xenophobia, for example, arose from the slave trade. Slavery wasn't a new concept, but race based chattel slavery was a bit more novel. It was cheap labor in the sense that it was free and perpetual. So colonial aristocrats so colonial aristocrats bought up some human beings to force to work for the salary of jack shit. This means that poor lower class colonists were competing on the labor market for actually having to be paid versus the human trafficking ring that allowed the owning class to pay nothing other than the initial blood money. The obvious bad guys in this situation are the human traffickers. Fucking duh. But they don't want to be the bad guys, and they have all the power, so instead they make the enslaved people the bad guys, convincing poor white people that they were better and more principled than even the best black person was easier than it should have been. But humans will take an easy answer that basically makes sense, so there were less people who wondered, wait, how the hell does that make any sense? Plus, it had the added benefit of fear of the unknown and pre existing my people are better than your people beliefs, so it wasn't drawing on a fully new concept. Consent manufactured, and even today, slavery is still legal under certain circumstances in the United States. How is consent manufactured for that? Drawing on the foundation laid by the people who brutally stole this land, with an added bit of all criminals are violent and thus less human and thus don't need to be treated well. Most people in prison are not in for violent crimes, never mind any who were falsely convicted. But work has been done for generations to strip people of their humanity to excuse atrocities committed against them and the oppression that they face. I understand the history of bullshit leveraged by powerful people to keep the working class divided. I understand the rhetorical devices and logical fallacies often at play. But damn it, I do not understand why anyone would sign off on weapons that could take out the entire planet. Who is left alive to celebrate your victory, dumbass? Maybe I should finally watch Oppenheimer. I heard that was pretty heavy on the necessary evil propaganda, or maybe some of the Godzilla movies, actually. Because, like, I mean, if the Godzilla movies were originally an allegory for nuclear weapons and testing, and the havoc it wreaks on people and the environment, that could be helpful. And newer movies with Godzilla are a bit more on the side of maybe planet ending weapons are okay as long as they're on our side and only hurt bad guys. Ugh, God. Yeah, that's it, isn't it? Is the cognitive dissonance really that we've made ourselves believe that the nuclear weapons will only mass extinction bad people? Please tell me that's not it. Uh, yeah, now this is a writing vlog. Actively working through problems and figuring out ideas for what that will mean, not just giving updates. I'm gonna have to write some of this stuff down outside of just my script. The outline will resume alongside this world building, and I hope that I build something meaningful and that makes some amount of sense. As for the status on my other goal, writing 2 fanfictions. I have gotten through at time of scripting, editing the 4th chapter of my current fic, which I spent longer on than usual. It just felt like it needed more. There needed to be more little moments that were cluing into how feelings were developing and changing. It wasn't bad, it was just lacking in detail, and it feels more impactful to understand more of how a character got there than to just see them suddenly there, you know? I struggle with a lot of media's portrayal of feelings development, something I plan to discuss in depth in an upcoming video. I don't find a lot of romantic subplots particularly compelling or well developed, and oftentimes the canon relationships is missing something. That ineffable, inarguable chemistry. And practicing my own interpretation of feelings development helps me to see the valid struggles in writing something convincingly. It also helps me improve my skills in this area, so when it comes time to rewrite the book, I know how to progress things. All in all, the fanfic is creating far fewer issues than the main book, which is to be expected. Thank you for sitting with me while I rambled through my thoughts. I hope that it helps you think through the geopolitics of your own stories a little bit. Let me know how your writing's been going this year. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.